A corporate explorer unit means managing a business with a different operating rhythm. While the existing business seeks to optimize performance within a set of known variables, a corporate explorer's task is to de-risk the company's investment in future growth opportunities. This requires a different organizational approach to manage the exploratory operating rhythm. Our guest today speaks from deep experience and adds even more detail to the case study that he wrote in the Corporate Explorer Fieldbook. Before I introduce our guest, I want to thank our sponsor of the Corporate Explorer series, Wazoku. Wazoku, which means great idea in Swahili, empowers large organizations to create effective, sustainable innovation ecosystems to both exploit and to explore. It does this through intelligent enterprise software that connects and harnesses the power of employees, suppliers, startups, universities, and the unique Wazoku crowd of over 700,000 global problem solvers. Wazoku calls this connected collective intelligence, and you can find our friends at Wazoku at www.wazoku.com. So welcome to today's episode of the Corporate Explorer series, and one called The Explorer Unit, How to Build a Team for Exploration. And we are joined by a seasoned corporate explorer who's done just that and has all the scar tissues and all the warts to prove exactly what he's done. But he's going to save you the trouble and he's going to share how to do it. Welcome to the show, CEO of Mavie Next, Erich Kruschitz. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
We did a little bit of homework about a week ago, and we probably should have pressed record on that because we went down so many rabbit holes, shared so much knowledge. It was really, really valuable, but it's hopefully going to give you an even better episode today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and we're going to repeat that with more today. So, Erich, I thought we'd start before sharing your experience of building a team and all the permutations that go with that maybe you'll give us a brief overview of how you got to here, and particularly how in 2020 UNIQA established a separate unit called SanusX, which is now Mavie Next, and what that journey brought for you. So we'll set context with that, and then we'll go into how to build a team.
For the beginning, from my side, I'm not the classical kind of innovator, also from my background. I always say, first of all, I'm probably what you would call a corporate animal to a certain extent. I'm 15 years with the same company, which is quite unusual in today's times. And second of all, the UNIQA board, the board of this insurance company, insurance group I'm with for these 15 years, they always put me where there's either something to fix or something to build new. That's the stuff I so far did well. Let's see for the future. And I really enjoy as well. My background actually is asset management, risk management, and that's where I'm coming from. So my first managerial role at UNIQA was overhauling or building a new risk management department after the financial crisis. So after we had more than 200-year-old company, first loss in 200 years, pre-government debt crisis. And at that time, I was building up this risk management unit new, which was really, really cool task and challenge. After that, my boss became CFO. He used to be the chief risk officer on the board, and now then he became finance and risk officer. Came to me and said, Erich, the finance department is not working. We have to completely restructure this department. Quarterly reporting doesn't work. We have to roll out ERP systems, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, cool, one of the largest and most important departments in the group. I was quite young back then, beginning of this. So it was a big honor, and I said, okay, let me try it. And then I really, 5 years, built this team there, restructured the finance department in a way together with this team, which worked really, really well. Luckily. And after 4 or 5 years, turned out now it works. And then I also felt, okay, I have to move on my own because the people around me were just technically better than me and the processes were fine. So what I figured back then was that UNIQA is it's a general insurance company. So we offer all kinds of insurance products in Austria and Eastern Europe. So I think it's 17 or 18 countries, if I'm not mistaken. And we always say from Geneva to Ukraine, that's the region where we are active. And one thing that always was obvious to me or was interesting to me is that we are actually a very strong health insurer as well, especially in Austria. And we also have a lot of healthcare assets. So we own hospitals, we have doctors' networks, and so on. And at that time, it began to become boring for me in finance. So I got the opportunity to do an executive MBA at INSEAD in Fontainebleau, and they sent me all over the world, Singapore, China, Silicon Valley, France, of course. And whenever I was telling the story of UNIQA, everybody said, that's so cool. You guys have health assets and you're an insurance company. Why don't you? And there's this mega trend in healthcare, right? Prevention and many things happening almost in all the countries. So why don't you make more out of this? So I came back, started to talk to my board and say, hey, that's actually something that's really interesting. Couldn't we do something around this? And finally, at the same time, my CEO, my now boss, Andreas Brandstetter, he came back from a kind of an executive education he did with his team at Harvard Business School, with the idea of ambidexterity. So he got to know Mike Touchman there and Charles O'Reilly and Andy Binns and so on. And he almost had exactly the same idea as me, just more structured. And that's our new strategy. We're building a new strategy, ambidexterity, and our exploration topic is healthcare. And the next thing I can remember is that I was alone in a newly founded company. And the goal was to build up or to get 100 million in revenues from healthcare until the end of 25. So that's how it all started.
And I love the fact that your leadership team goes away and does something with that knowledge that they learn. You know, people who always ask for advice and don't do anything with that advice, I call them askholes. So they're always asking advice, but then you give them advice and they won't do anything, including going to these executive retreats to do workshops. That it's only valuable if you actually do something with it. And that's obviously stimulated your mind, your leadership team, and you did something with it. But magnificent story. And the fact that you're willing to act and act before you need to as well is really interesting. There's one thing before we get into the content of this book that dawned on me was, firstly, UNIQA's willingness to create a fighter brand from within. That takes huge bravery from a leadership team that's doing well. So when the organization is doing well, to still have the foresight to go, it's not going to always last this way. What are the characteristics that you saw of the team and your colleagues and yourself that gave that willingness? Was it some crisis on the horizon, or was it just a willingness to go again before a crisis arises?
Always hard to say in hindsight, and I have not been part of all the discussions in the board, of course. But like one thing which is, and you hear it over and over again, but I really think it's true. It all starts with the CEO, right? And we have a super visionary CEO with Andreas Brandstetter. He's quite a while already in this function, but he always wants to be this step ahead. Yeah, as you say, when he's asking, he's also listening and then thinking, how can I further develop this company? And that's you would need to know him. It's a very, very unique character who really steps up and says, okay, this is what we need to do. And there was no life-threatening thing or pain or whatever. So it is a situation where we are actually quite healthy. I think we're making around 300 million in profits per year. That's not like the best company in the world, but you can get quite comfortable with it, especially as an insurance company. But you have these characters, right? You have Andreas there. He became CEO very early, very, very young. And then you have he picked his management team who has a similar mindset. And I think I'm super lucky and super happy that I had this environment, because without this environment and without this support and this vision from the top management, it wouldn't have worked, right? I could have done whatever I wanted. It wouldn't have worked. And that even now, like this morning, 8 a.m. in the morning, once a week, I have 1 hour with Andreas, right? And we're discussing how can we further develop this. He has his very specific ideas. He's also pressuring me to a certain extent, but it's a good thing because he wants progress there. He really stands up for the topic. But even after almost 5 years, he's still totally committed to it. And without that, as I said, I think it would not work. Of course, I also have to deliver and execute, but he has to back it in all the board meetings, in the annual budgeting discussions, to defend my budget, to give me the freedom and independence we need as a team. If he and his management team would not believe in the topic of Mavie, I think we would die quite quickly, and it would have never been born, so to say. So I think that's the main thing. Of course, there are 1,000 things afterwards to execute. And I cannot even say that I know how to do it, because you have to ask me again end of 25 if we were really successful. So we are still on the way. But that's the basis. I think that's really, and you need this kind of character.
It's so difficult to see that from the outside. So when I'll give you an example. So I'm running an event here in Ireland with a couple of colleagues. It's called the Reinvention Summit, April 29 and 30 next year. And we wanted to have some CEOs on the panels. But you know, when you go to an event and you see the CEO talking about some innovation that they've had, and you can tell they actually don't know anything about it because they didn't do any of the work. They didn't have a weekly call with Erich in their company to really understand it. They didn't go away and do a corporate education program to really understand that innovation. And that piece, you say, the characteristics, that willingness to learn, that willingness to try things, the willingness to risk things, but also currently de-risking them, is so rare and so difficult to actually identify from the outside. You only actually know it when you're working for somebody. So I love that characteristic that you're talking about. But it actually is a nice segue for the very first role. So picture, if you can, remember back towards all the twists in the road that you've had to get to where you are today. Starting off with Mavie Next, or Sanus X as it was back then, defining the purpose and the scope and the why. So trying to shape this originally, because what an awful lot of entrepreneurs or corporate explorers forget is that there's a why for you, firstly, for doing it. There's a why then from the parent company to understand what you're doing. Then there's a why for the employees that you're going to onboard. And then there's a why for the customers, for the public to understand as well. So you have to actually get all those different whys in place. And this is, as you say in the book, the very first step is to define this why. Maybe you'll tell us about that before we get into the team then behind that why.
First of all, it's a good one. And second, I'm not even sure if there's still work to do in the different aspects and different like types of whys that you just said. I think to start like with the very beginning, of course, the first thing was also to convince the core business, right? The insurance company, and at least the managers from the topic, and give them the why. And like, again, I didn't come up with that. It was Andreas. I think he told me once he did it on the plane when just writing it on a piece of paper. He did two things, yeah. One thing, he gave it a frame, also that a narrative, let's call it a narrative, where said actually what we are doing, we are moving from the insurance industry, already quite strong insurer, and we're going to get a better insurer and even more efficient. That's important because we want to get stronger in what we're doing. But we are broadening the scope and from moving from the insurance industry into the caring industry. And it's a simple sentence, but I still think it gives people some kind of perspective to understand that the caring industry is much bigger than the insurance industry. We still will do what we did because we care about people when they have any kind of issues, but we do much more, especially in the healthcare area. We also help them with their health prevention and so on and so forth, whatever Mavie is currently doing. That gave them, and there was a lot more behind it. He even wrote a manifesto, like I think it was only a 2-pager or so, where he describes his version of this story to first the management team. I think it was the top 80 or so that we gathered together, or top 100, something like this. And then to the broader UNIQA group of people, like 14,000 employees and in his town halls and so on. And that was super important to onboard the people and to get them on the journey. And also with his top 80, last sentence on this one, like after being, what was it? I think we started in December 2009, 18, if I'm not mistaken. And I think in June 2019, we brought together the top 18 of the group for 1 week, where we really worked with Mike Tushman, Andy Binns, Charles O'Reilly. This brought them to HBS and only worked on this topic of ambidexterity, like really focused. Like we were living together in little houses on the campus and so on. And we worked on both. Yeah, we worked on exploitation, how to get better in operational excellence. Super important for us. That's the core. That's where we are coming from. That also our profit need to be sustained. But we also worked on explore and what's actually the goal there. And then this narrative also became more than a narrative, but also got kind of financial goals that I mentioned before. So what do we actually want to achieve as a group? Because we also have investors. We are a stock-listed company. We have to tell the people what we're doing with the money of our shareholders. And And then we came up with these things, okay, we want to scale it first and then we turn it around to make it profitable. But first it has to have a decent size. So we said, okay, then back then it wasn't even clear that I will do it, but we said Mavie, not the name back then, but like these exploration units should have at least 100 million revenue by end of 25. It's not a scientifically derived number, but it has some context. Yeah, we are 8 billion revenue group. 100 million is not, it's still tiny within the group, but it has a certain size where you see now it becomes a real business, yeah, which is also relevant within this huge group. And we can further develop it later. But if it's smaller than that, it's really not interesting either for our shareholders or any other stakeholders that we have. So that was a really important one to get started and like to onboard the team. And then all the other stuff, like how do we, the why to the team. Of course, first we had to found the company. And then we defined as a new team, as a Mavie team, or back then a Sanos X team, we tried to define, okay, what's actually important to us as a team. Then we even did things like, which might sound a little bit weird, but we stopped talking about UNIQA, for example. We called them our shareholders. We said we have to deliver to them because they're funding us. They're giving us the opportunity to change something. So that helped us, for example, because otherwise people always get trapped into this corporate kind of thinking. I have to talk to this function or that function. We have shareholders and we are a separate company. We have to fulfill this mission. And on a purpose level, I think that was rather easy. I would even say that we worked it out with the whole team and said, okay, what are actually the main values that we should work on? But like, what do we want to achieve? And then this vision came out. It sounds a little bit fussy, but still it's very important for us. We want to create a healthier society. That's what we have as a headline there. And we say, okay, when we go out in 2025 or even then later on in 2030, and we like observe the people in the markets where we are active, Austria, Eastern Europe. Currently, it's mainly Austria, Poland, Germany. We really want to be part of a kind of a movement that makes people healthier, and it should be visible, and you could actually feel it when you're out there. I think that's still, even though we are really hiring a lot of technical experts from all over the globe with great education, much smarter than me by far, really, yeah. That's very important to them. Yeah, and that's one of. Why would you ever come? Like, if you could work everywhere, why would you ever come to Vienna and work for a subsidiary of Central European Insurance Company? So there must be something, and it's not salary. That I can tell you. I think we are paying there, but like they could make much more money somewhere else. So and that, but in the beginning, that was actually that was the easy part because the team somehow defined it itself. It was more. In our management team, it was more the task to really take it and really then live it.
The thing I picked up a lot is the language you chose. Andreas as well, choosing the word of care. So we're in the care business. And then the language that you choose, because it really forms the mindset, thinking about the corporate parent as a shareholder removes that kind of us and them. It means actually they're helping us. And I think that's a huge problem when it comes to ambidexterity, that a lot of times you see each other as the enemy and like they're stuck in the ways, we're going to disrupt them, and it becomes us and them. So that's a really, really important insight. But you talked about there, Erich, you can't compete with wages. So therefore the why needs to be important. But also, as you told me in our prep call, so does the personalities of that team. So you need somebody who's more open to risk. You need somebody who's more curious, somebody who's a builder in the early days. And as we'll talk as we progress throughout this episode, that changes as the business changes as well. So let's launch into what we talked about the last day, building the team, the different skills and personalities that are needed to build that team. And then we'll go into how that changes as the company evolves.
No, that's a good one. That's probably one of my scars that you mentioned into the introduction. It was a big learning, and actually, I also would be super interested in views from people who are listening in what your experience is. In our case, what you just mentioned was that we still go through different phases of maturity of this exploration unit. That means, like in the very beginning, it was a lot about ideation, incubation, being creative, trying things to a certain extent also, then some even now, but more often really failing on things and learn and then go to the next. And that, of course, asks for very specific people. Like one example is that I think when I started, asked people at UNIQA who wants to join this new company. And of course, it was a very cool thing because it's a new thing. We're investing, it's innovation. So I had really many, I think 20, 30 applications to join the company. And I tried to be really restrictive. So I only took, I think, 10 people, if I'm not mistaken. And I gave them really hurdles. I said, you have to quit your job in the insurance company, which is not a small thing because you're losing a lot of benefits and perks and all that. And you start with a new company, which has a completely different setup without the perks. So you really have to be willing to do that. So, and I ended up with 9 people from the core business. And I have to say, like, all really good people, like really successful people. Like one of them was, for example, our chief economist, so smart people. And from these 9 people, 10 including me, besides me, there's only one person left. So like almost all of them turned out didn't really feel comfortable in this environment. So after 1.5 years, we had to let go of all of them because it was more like their kind of way of working was different, right? They came from a corporate. They were more like, okay, tell me what to do and I will deliver. I will work really hard. But in this case, it wasn't about telling them what to do. It was about they have to find a way to solve problems which I also didn't have any answers, which is completely different than working in an established corporate. So that didn't work out. We got mostly younger people, I would say, sometimes also former entrepreneurs who failed or just wanted to not run their own company, who had an exit or something. So that helped in the beginning. And then what happened after 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, we got successful, which is actually cool on the one hand. So we had then 2, 3 companies that we either acquired or where we built services on our own, and which overcame this phase of experimentation. So I think the example that I made in our conversation last week was we had a company which has a business model. In this case, it was employee health. Yeah, we already also acquired the company as a basis for that. We were market leader in Austria in this area. And then we took the same people who actually were experimenting before ideation, incubation, and so on, but not to experiment with a new service, but to implement a CRM system, customer relationship management, like a software project. Like it was like it's nothing new, right? It's a proven process how to implement. It's a project, and like this software project is not like our experiments, which cost around 5,000, 10,000, maybe 15,000 euros. It had a price tag of several 100,000 euros. Yeah. But these people, they were not used to do project management. So they started, they just tested. And then after 6 months, we found out it doesn't work at all because we don't have a plan how to implement the CRM. And we burnt a lot of money, which we shouldn't have burned, to be honest. Yeah, but now I can talk about it. Yeah,
The pain
fine.
has subsided now.
And that's when I realized, yeah, I know these people who can do that. I was head of group finance. I was leading one of the largest IT projects we had in the group, like rolling out SAP in 20 countries back then. And there were different skills, different strengths. So I should have seen that, to be honest, yeah, but I didn't. And then we decided together as a leadership, okay, for these tasks, when companies actually get mature or services, and we really come into the scaling phase, we mostly need different people, different skills, different processes, and we have to change this all over. So we really changed. Like nowadays, we have teams who are only doing ideation and incubation, and very rarely they also, if an idea works, they also go into the next phase, but they are handing it like literally over to other teams. Basically, now we are growing this company, now we're growing the service. Please take it. We have different people who do that. Sometimes people can do both, but very rarely, at least in our case, and maybe somebody had different experience. It was a painful but super important learning. I still think, thankfully, we learned it quite early before a lot more happened. But it's just something where I realized, okay, not you have to use the people where really their strengths are, and like when you're building something like this from scratch, you probably have to use different teams and different settings. The other thing we do now, I think even a little bit more often than in the past. So we do every quarter, we do we call a reset week. Yeah, we still work according to objectives and key results because it helps us to keep focus. I think I also wrote about it in the book. It's a bit polarizing. Some people say, no, it's not working for innovation processes. For us, it worked well because it gave us this focus. And our OKR cycles are mostly 3 months. Not in every case. We're pragmatic about it. And after these 3 months, we actually take the whole company for a reset week, where every team really discusses within the team, are we still doing the right things? Do we still have the right setup based on the learnings from the last 3 months? Is it still paying into this healthier society vision? Is it also paying into this financial goal that we are having? And then the teams come back themselves, presenting to the leadership team, or actually to everyone. It's an open meeting, what their findings are, and if they want to either pivot or continue as they're working or stop the team. Very rarely it happens that they want to stop their own team. But the discussion is the important thing. And then with all these insights that we get from all our teams, we are now 3. Before that, we 4 people leadership team. We lock ourselves for 1 day into some external place outside our office, and then define the setup more or less for the next 3 months. And we also can stop things. We can put teams differently together. So with all and we try to do this every 3 months in order not to run too long in old patterns, and because things are moving quite fast. Yeah, so that's one of the tools we are using in our way of working, and how to set the teams together, simply because of this learning that we had in the beginning.
That's really interesting that you have that check-in weekly with Andreas, and then you have the check-in with your team every 3 months. That comes around quite quickly for a team. Very important insight for everybody to check in with their team like that, into the systems, are they working, etc. But one of the things you told me the last day, coming back to the CRM system, is that you've noticed this before as a pattern, because you've seen it now, that once you move to implementing an IT system like a CRM system, it's a milestone. It's a signal that this is changing now. The explorer type character or personalities inside the company are going to get itchy feet here, or they're going to feel like it's changing, and you might have some flight risks, people risking leaving the company as well. I thought that was an important insight.
And again, that's our experience. I think it's not the blueprint for everyone, but our experience also, sometimes we have great people which just don't fit into the current phase of the company. So we are also, at least for Austrian terms and maybe Central or Continental European terms, we are quite quick in also letting go of people. So we use this kind of Netflix culture deck a lot, and we say, okay, we always want to have the best person in every position. And we're very open with our people. Okay, currently we are now in a phase where your skills are not fitting perfectly. And then we are also trying to talk with the people very openly. If they still feel like they can make a difference in the team and really want to perform and work with us, and we also give them a very open feedback. So actually we have also quite a high rate of turnover in the team. So it's between 15 and 20%, mostly initial from our side. But you have to ask the team. But if I look at it, and I'm talking a lot to them in a kind of a positive way, because everyone knows, okay, I can really deliver and I can really perform here. And as soon as I'm not performing 100%, I will also know there will be no surprises. I will always get good feedback and develop, and they will also help me to find something else or something new, in terms I'm not the best fit anymore. So that kind of became a culture. So we had what I wanted to say is, we value the team extremely. It's one of the coolest teams I've ever worked with, or maybe the coolest team I've ever worked with, because of that. And nobody should, and I think, is really afraid here in a sense of, or even thinking about leaving on their own in a room or whatever, or at home, being frustrated, because we can always talk about it very openly, which is also very different from the corporate setup. That's why it's also good probably to have these two a little bit separate.
And to your point, the type of character who wants to build something will get bored when it's no longer building and it's now exploitation. So it's moved from explore to exploit. Corporate explorers don't like that. I hated that when I had to do all very linear work, left brain work, Excel sheets, etc. it was like torture to my brain. So I totally get that, and having the honesty to be able to have those conversations to go, look, I'm not really contributing anymore. I've left jobs like that in the past to the company. I go, look, there's nothing else I can do. The company doesn't have a trajectory for me. I'm going to leave. And you leave really well when you do that, because both parties are happy and you're not hiding. You're not hiding in a role and just rotting your
That's
brain.
what we are trying to do, yeah. And it doesn't always work, of course. Yeah, sometimes there are misunderstandings and so on. Of course, it's all human beings, but that's exactly what we're trying to achieve. Yeah, like this respectful level, on the same level kind of conversation. Yeah.
As you've grown, you've also acquired growth, like most companies would, which is a great sign that you're actually, maybe it's an aqua hire where you're trying to hire a team, maybe it's the software, maybe it's some patent that some company has. And I thought it was interesting that you were saying that many acquisitions, the age of the founder has a dramatic effect on how that's going to play out, both young and old. And I thought you'd share that with our audience as well.
Again, sheer experience. There's no scientific background on this one. I don't have studies, but like just what we observed is we invested and we acquired different kinds of companies throughout the last 5 years. It was either long lasting or like bit older family businesses. For example, we did this in the elderly care environment, where we invested in a company which is several decades old, and there's a couple who founded the company, Robert and Angelika Pozzina in this case, and they really were looking for somebody who takes over what they've built their whole life and make it something hopefully even better, but keep it alive. They didn't have kids to take it over and so on. And so there was one thing. And of course, for us, it was great because we had experienced founders who were doing this kind of rather complex and not easy business with elderly care, and were willing to hand it over to us and also teach and train our people and our skill that came in was actually digitize, make it, scale it in a certain extent, also bring it then to our customer base. We have 17 million customers with UNIQA, so connect it. But it looks like a win-win. And today I would actually say it is a win-win. In the beginning, in this case, it was really, really hard because there was some kind of fundamental misunderstanding. Yeah. So then that I take totally on my responsibility, of course. I came in and said, okay, now at the beginning I said we acquired 39% of this company and said, okay, now we do this, and this, and I want to have these changes, and I want to have that reporting, and I want to have this connection to UNIQA. And they looked at me and said, no, we're doing things here since 20, 30 years the way we do them, and we're not going to change them. Yeah, you are learning from us, it's not me, not us learning from you. And I was under the impression, hey guys, we bought 39% of your shares. You have an earn-out in the next 3 to 5 years, and they would run for the earn-out to maximize the value. Yeah, and that's exactly the experience, and most of us will know that from younger startup founders who like serial entrepreneurs. They say, okay, I built something. They also very purpose driven, but they think more rational maybe and think, okay, my earnout is here and there, and they optimize my earnout, and I also want to hand over this company, but they're not so extremely attached to this company and to these teams and to their customers as the other people who are doing this for decades. So actually for Angelika and Robert, money was a factor, but it was for sure not the most important thing, right? For them, it was important that the company and the team and the customers, that they safeguard them and that it becomes something even better, but also like that they leave something, which is really has value. It was way more important to them than to optimize any kind of earnout. And then I had to learn, and I did learn another card. In the I don't know, third or fourth board meeting and like our weekly interactions, I started to understand, and as you can imagine, we have a completely different mode of working with these two than, for example, I think we can make this example as well quite openly. We invested last year in telemedi, which is super cool investment on our side. I'm super happy that we could make it. So that Abel, the founder, is a Polish young entrepreneur, trusted us and let us take over the majority even in the shares of the largest telemedicine provider in Eastern Europe. And Pavel is completely different kind of animal. Yeah, one of the smartest guys I know. He's absolute great entrepreneur. He grew a company, highly profitable, double-digit million revenues within, I think, 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. He has also this earnout, and he wants to further optimize as much as possible. Like working with him, I had a call with him, like learning all the time, every time, super fast, but completely different setup, as you can imagine. Like Pavel is, yeah, okay, I have a team, but the most important thing is the company and the growth of the company. He works with the team, like it's more like our culture, yeah? Best person in every position. It's not the most important thing that I have somebody 20, 30 years with my company, which also has a value. I know that from our core business, so don't get me wrong. But in his case, it was growth, digital efficiency, and let's get this something really, really big, which is, I hope you can hear it, completely different, like also motivation and setup as in the first case that I described. And now we are working, like we have a portfolio now of, what is it, Mavie Work, Coradomo, Telemedi, Mavie, Wallaby, Biome. I think I haven't forgotten anyone now, hopefully. 6 companies with who are all of them are somewhere on this scale. Yeah. And it's different to work with them. It's different to let them work together because we also want to connect these customer journeys, and their priorities and their motivations are just different. And that's something I'm as I said in the introduction, I'm coming from the asset management side. I'm a financial person. I'm very organizationally process driven. So I also know hopefully my weak points. So I'm more the rational person. Yeah. So I had a really hard time in the beginning to connect this totally purpose driven or totally like driven from the legacy kind of entrepreneurs, which are like different kinds of entrepreneurs, but both successful and great entrepreneurs. But to think into this kind of relationship was much, much harder for me. But, I'm happy that I have my second managing director, Lucas, who covers this other part. And like together until now we can manage it quite well. But that was a super important learning. It was also very exciting to go through this. Not always nice, because as you can imagine, there were some very emotional discussions throughout the time as well with the one or the other.
More scars for you, Erich. But it's really like a key, isn't it? Like if you can identify the character, the personality, the traits and the principles of the company you're trying to acquire, to make sure it's a fit, it saves so much heartache in the long run. But it's a difficult thing to do because you'll have this dissonance about, yeah, they're not really the right fit from a personality perspective, but their technology is, and you have to make the decision. So there's so much that goes through your mind in those moments. And again, Erich is up for anybody reaching out, Erich, that might want to discuss these things with you as well. And we'll share where to find you at the end. Last one for you, which is a quick one, maybe a quick one, but a painful one, is this whole thing about celebrating failure. And I think fail fast, fail quickly. It's often mistaken that you don't want to fail at all, but you want to do is put out little kind of exploratory ideas to see if there's feedback quickly. So they're cheap and there's not much investment of time, energy, and finance in that. But the bigger the failure, the more painful it is. So this is something that you told me as well before we came on air. Maybe we'll share this as well as a final message.
It's 2 things, right? So like sometimes it's hard, like for, at least in our case, and it really depends on the context probably, but sometimes it's hard to understand when did you actually fail. Yeah. So that at least for me, sometimes we have teams and we have services where it's not completely clear, is it working? Is there a product market fit or not? You know, so it's not, the data is not black or white. And you have to make these decisions, in our case, every 3 months. And that's what we try to do, is to turn it around and let the teams give us at least a recommendation or ideally decide on their own and say, okay, should we further invest or not? Mostly they come back, so there we're not good. I know other companies I'm exchanging with which are better at this, but most of the team come back and say we want to continue because we are super excited about our topic. Yeah, of course. And then we have to make the decision on the team, which is really, really hard because it's not clear. And we had twice the case where the teams made the decision, then it's much, much easier because we say, okay, as you're closest to the topic, then let's move on. When we make the decision, I think it's also very important to create some kind of ritual or something around it. So what we have here at the office, we have a big wall, we call it a wall of ideas, where we have a lot of light bulbs. It looks like innovation tool thing, but it really serves a value, or like has a value for us. And like every idea that we start in this 3-month cycle, like somebody's writing the name of the idea there, we are switching on the lights and say, okay, that's what we are currently looking at. But even more important, after the 3 months, if we stop something, the whole team goes there. We have a beer together and we switch the light off together. And that's this kind of habit, so this ritual turned out to help us to close things really. We know it's gone, it's important learnings, but we close these things and then we really stop thinking about it and working on it. So that's this internal, like this failure topic, how to stop it and really stop it and not invest more and more resources. And the other thing I think I mentioned before is when you go from ideation, incubation into scaling, that's where you just have to realize from a certain amount of investment or revenue that you say, okay, now it's about operational excellence. It's not about experimenting anymore. In our case, we mostly do it in a way that we say, okay, ideation incubation happens within Mavie Next, which is the product development company. Everybody in here knows that this is the place to experiment. And when something reaches a certain size and we say, okay, this is actually scalable, the product market fit is proven, it's great, then we spin it out in a separate company. And one thing with a separate company is also that these people who before were product owners and more like these experimental people, either you take new people or sometimes you can keep the people, but they become managing directors. And that also gives them a different kind of also responsibility, but also visibility. And then they start hopefully to also work more in an operational excellent mode and reprocesses, project management and so on. That's our kind of tool set, how we do it.
One of the things I learned from doing the show is there's so many tools available, there's so many processes available that you got to make them work for you because they'll work for your mindset, the composition of your team. This is why this cookie cutter approach to corporate consultancies don't work because you're so unique, your opportunity is unique, the territories you're in are unique, so you can't have a cookie cutter approach. Erich, thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge. Where can people find out? You mentioned about people reaching out to discuss ideas with you, etc. Where's the best place to find you?
Just write to me on LinkedIn, tag me. I hope to be very responsive and I'm really open for exchange. Send me your email address on LinkedIn. That's the easiest one because then it's much easier to follow up. LinkedIn messages, sometimes I lose the overview, but just let me know any questions and any kind of point of discussion. I'm really happy to share.
I'll link to Erich's LinkedIn profile as well to make it easier for you in the show notes. Finally, just to thank our sponsor, Wazoku, which means great idea in Swahili. Wazoku empowers large organizations to create effective, sustainable innovation ecosystems to both exploit and explore that Erich and I were talking about. It does this through intelligent enterprise software that connects and harnesses the power of employees, suppliers, startups, universities, and the unique Wazoku crowd of 700,000 plus global problem solvers. Wazoku calls this connected collective intelligence, and you can find them at www.wazoku.com. Finally, to our guest, thank you for joining us, Erich Kruschitz.
Thanks for having me.